Hi everyone. In looking at developing vocabulary for our students and talking about increasing reading abilities, I really wanted to hone in on those 10 words that have been shared as examples. So, for example, there may be a list of 10 words that your students are going to be focusing on for the week. And from that list of 10 words, I'm looking at the words specifically that are going to be incorporated into music education and into musical learning. So, words like complex, dominant, function, layer, measure, and source are words that you may be using in your music classes all the time. And so really explaining to students what these words mean within the context of music learning is really going to be helpful for your students to understand what the meanings are of those words, and specifically in music. So I'm going to use the example of the word measure. This is a word that of course we use in music all the time. We're constantly saying to our students, refer to measure, go to measure 3, go to measure 4. And so looking at the word measure, also thinking about that of course has a different meaning in math or science or in many other subject areas. But what does that specifically mean in music? So in music, using student-friendly language, a measure, we also call it a bar, right? So telling your students that is a grouping of notes that has an equal length to the time signature. So bringing that up, talking about that with your students is going to help them really understand that specific musical context of the word measure. And in music, we're not using vocabulary the same way as we would if we're reading a book or if we were reading a passage from a science textbook. But what you're doing, of course, is you're teaching music, you're directly instructing your students. So the word that I'm thinking of course, is being intentional. So how can you be intentional with those words? By giving students opportunities to use them, by you using them regularly, and maybe you have your students turn to their partner who's sitting next to them. Maybe they're two clarinet players, and you say, explain to the person sitting next to you what it means, what a measure means in music. There's a very small example of something that you can do very quickly to help students gain an understanding of words as they relate to musical instruction. Of course, words like complex, you can talk about complex musical structures, complex rhythmic structures. Words like dominant, we know in music we use that word a lot, talking about the fifth note of a scale, but also looking at dominant chords, things like that. Talking about function of a key signature, using the word function, the word layer, and then of course also the word source. So think about how you can use those in your classroom and be really intentional with language with your students. Good luck and have fun.